Alright, I messed up the audio, so I'm replacing it, and this is going to be a bad overdub. But we're going to talk about comments here today. And I must have said something amusing there. Alright, so we're going to look at 3 different kinds of comment styles, and in particular see how Eclipse can help make a comment. So in Java, there are basically sort of 2 main kind of comments and 1 specialty one. There is a single line comment that starts with // and it goes to the end of a line. When you first make your main method, it makes a sort of annoying little comment here that you should get rid of. It doesn't say anything about your program. It just says, hey, add some code here. So make sure you remove that from your stuff. Single line comments are useful for small little hints as to what's going on in the code. So here I'm writing a little code to make a variable, and here's a comment saying something about that variable. Now, in this case, when I say like count holds the number of people, like in a room or something, in some ways that should almost tell you that you should go back and change the variable name. Like, why comment it when you can actually have a descriptive variable name? So you might find that single line comments are almost better used to sort of give you a hint as to when you should actually improve your own code rather than add comments. Single line comments are good for like little blocks of code. Hey, in this section, let's get information about the user, and then in the next one, let's calculate something, and the last one, let's output it or something like that. Dividing up sort of 3 or 4 lines of code. So you can also put the single line comments at the end of a statement, and if it's very short, that's a reasonable place to go, but you want to make sure you're not wrapping over the line break or going too far. So if it's like printed on paper or something, it looks bad. So keep those very, very short. And here I'm already running into a little trouble with length. For the most part, you're usually better putting that single line comment immediately before the statements. And I see we're getting some flashing again. I thought I had that figured out, but apparently not. Some people feel like you need to put // at the end in the comment. That's not true. The single line comment starts with a / and goes to the end of the line. There's also block comments. It starts with a /*, and it's for multi-line comments. Everything between the start /* and the end */ is a comment. Eclipse here, sort of for nice style reasons, put in an asterisk on the line. That is not necessary, but it makes a nice visual demarcation as to where the comment is. And of course, it gets color coded as well. So again, the comment strictly is from this beginning */ to the end beginning / to end */. Everything else, no matter what it is a comment. But by convention, people like to use a little decorative border to show where it is. It's kind of rare to have block comments in the middle of like a method. If it's so complicated that you need to have a long description, you're probably better off taking that chunk of code, turning it into its own method, and then describing it there. Now, a lot of times these block comments get turned into something more formal, something called a Javadoc. And Eclipse can help you form a Javadoc. A Javadoc basically has a style and then its own notation, these little tags. Many of you are familiar with the tag concept from social media, Twitter and such. So you basically give some at something, param for parameters, at return, at author, and Javadoc uses that to turn that into a nicely styled document that people can read more easily. So essentially you're going to add sort of a description as to what the overall, like a method does or a class does, and then you're going to add in these different tags for each little part that needs to be explained a little bit. So here's a real Javadoc from like a big project. It's about setting a tooltip text, you know, the part that appears when you hover over something. And so there's a description using, you know, nice English sentences with punctuation and so on, capitalization. And then there's that at param that describes what this parameter is, the string text. And it looks like a block comment by sort of convention. It adds another asterisk at the start, but again, that's actually part of the comment. It's not a new kind of comment. It is just a reformatted block comment. And then it has those special at symbol kind of stuff inside there. Notice there's, you know, like the param text stuff talks a little bit about any special cases, like if this text value is null. We don't know what null is yet, but you know, you can sort of say it has this behavior in this case and this behavior in this case. That could also more generally go in the general description. So there's some decision making about what reads better. And it's a little hard to remember all these parts, but at least Eclipse can help us do this. So let's make just a method first. We're going to add numbers together if it's positive, subtract otherwise, and then we want to comment it and look at these Javadocs. So I'm going to write my method, and you know, when you write a method, you want to think about, first of all, like what is the name that's meaningful, and then what kind of information goes into it through the parameters and what comes out through the return. And that sort of helps describe what that first line of the method looks like. And you should go through that process in your mind when you're writing a method, right? You want to just make sure you have all those elements, and it'll help you remember the parts that need to be in that first line. So we're going to have our usual public static, and then this combined together, we're going to use it ints, and so if you add them, subtract them, that's going to make an int answer. So the return type is an int, and then the name combined together, which is not a very good name, but it doesn't do much, so it's hard to have a better name. And I'm going to have two parameters, int value 1, and then with a comma, the next parameter, int value 2. And again, if these were something else more meaningful, you try to give a name to those parameters instead of just value 1 and value 2. So what are we doing here? Well, we have to decide whether that first value is positive or not. So we use an if statement. I was going to say here, notice it's complaining about wanting to say you need a return. And some people want to go right away to these quick fixes. Those are usually wrong, to be honest. Like, quick fix, make it void. Hey, I know I want this thing to return a value, so don't make it void. Don't let Eclipse boss you around. You know, be a little patient, finish your task, and then when you get a return in there finally, that error will go away. So don't leap on that and just take whatever dumb quick fix it suggests just to make it syntactically correct. So I'm going to check if value 1 is greater than 0. We're going to use a relational operator, greater than. And in here, I'm going to do it in two parts, kind of like I wanted you to do in the assignment, and we'll compare these two different ways in this method. So if sum equals value, so if it's greater than 0, we're going to add them together, add together value 1 and value 2, store it in a sum variable, and then return it. So if the value 1 is greater than 0, that block executes, and it does that part and then finishes the method. And then otherwise, that means it's less than or equal to 0, I'm going to return this expression directly, value 1 minus value 2. And so that's a little more concise. I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to do it. In fact, probably a slightly better way in general once you get past, if you're doing trivial things like this. But the sum does give a hint as to what's going on, right? We're adding those things together in this part. And I do use the statement blocks. It's good to always use the curly brace statement blocks just to allow you to add more lines of code in there if you want to, without worrying about indenting issues or making a mistake. So again, it's nice to always just put the curly braces there as a matter of course. And I could format it like this. And again, that you're gonna have, if you're working for an organization, they're gonna have a code style that tells you how it should be formatted. Some people like stuff on separate lines, and some people don't. I will say, notice the if statement kind of adds to the complexity of interpreting what's going on in the code. The indenting becomes important. You have to kind of look at it a little more carefully, see what belongs to what. It's just easier to kind of get confused and make mistakes. So you have to be, again, sort of paid careful attention to details. So that method's done. There are two return statements, which are kind of interesting, right? And so it either picks the true side and does it and then returns out of the method, or does the false side and returns out of the method. But both are fine. Since we return an int, the program has to be sure something's going to return, and since both the true and the false side have returned, it's guaranteed to return something. If you don't set those up correctly, you might find that it complains about not necessarily hitting a return statement during the execution. So let's test this method. I'm gonna give a little explanatory text and then use plus to combine that with the output from combine together. And even though combine together is an int, it gets forced into being added to that string, concatenated with a string. And I'm passing these two values, 10 and 5. And when I run it, it should take that result and make a new single string that it prints out to the screen. So we got 15, so yeah, 10 is greater than 0, so it does the true part. 10 plus 5 is 15 and returns sum. Now let's make it negative 10, so that's going to be false, and it should return negative 10 minus 5, you get minus 15. So that's right as well. All right, so that's quite a bit of work for sort of a fairly trivial result, and again, actually the whole point of this is to add a Javadoc to it. So we can do that by hitting that Command Alt J or the Windows Alt J. I'm going to add a little single line comment in here first to kind of show how that might go. And again, it's not a particularly interesting comment. But then if you just put yourself in the text of the method and hit those keys, it automatically makes a template for the Javadoc. And I'm going to get a little written description here, again, specifying what this method does. And when you're doing it, it's going to seem a little redundant because you're like looking at some, description of the method in an assignment or something, and you're sort of repeating it, but you needed the comment has, the description has to be in a place where people reading the code can see it. So your job as a programmer is to give reasonable descriptions and nicely described comments, and you might have to adapt the adapt what I'm saying in the assignment. But your job here is to say what it does, right? Not like what, not like the stuff I would describe in an assignment, like how you do it. You know, you're not going to say like use an if statement to check these two. You're just going to say this is what it does. It adds them if it's positive and subtracts them otherwise. Not use an if to check if it's bigger than 0 kind of thing. You're not trying to repeat the code in English form. Then for these tagged things, the param for parameters, I'm just saying it's an integer value. There's nothing else I know about it, so it's a sort of a generic thing instead of saying like number of people in a room or something like that. And then I return the sum or difference of the two parameters. Sometimes that's sort of redundant with a description a little bit, and you need to decide where the details should go. But notice this is a nice, this is now a Javadoc, and the thing is I can automatically generate a Javadoc web page, essentially, formal documentation for people to use. And at least the first time you got to go find this Javadoc program under bin. I'm not sure why. It seems to know where it is basically, so I'm not sure why that was trouble. And then you can say which part of the project you want to generate Javadocs for. And where it goes into the project folder, in this case into a doc folder in the project folder. And everything needs to be saved, and then it generates a bunch of stuff. And here's this doc folder inside. So there's the source and then the doc folder. And there's a bunch of stuff like an overall index and stuff. And I'm just looking at the lecture webpage, lec5a.html. That's the name of the class, .html. And it has, so here's that combined together. And it kind of does it in a nice, puts a description in a nice place. There's a bunch of other stuff for sure in there that makes it hard to read until you get used to looking at these kind of documentations. And then here are those little tags, right? It says value 1 is an integer value, and it returns this. It just puts it all in a nice written thing. You can, and there's usually a lot of links you can click between classes and so on, but there's nothing else in my project, so I can't really do that. So you're not going to really be generating the Javadocs web pages, but it is going to be very important for you in assignments to use this Javadocs style so you're ready to produce nice formal documentation for us to read and eventually other people that are working on a project with you. I guess that's probably it.